top 10 reasons not to move to Australia. I mean, I think I'm from Australia. I think Australia is an absolutely amazing place to live. So I'm very curious about top 10 reasons not to visit here. They're definitely going to say something like animals or something. That's definitely going to be on there. But I bet you an American has made this video.
G'day mates, how you going? Because today we're talking about the land down under, Australia. Is it a country? Is it a continent? Do kangaroos really just roam freely about? Sounds like fake news to me. But it's not. The world's 6th largest country is a giant 3 million square mile island continent stuck between the Indian and Pacific Oceans. And this strange geographic location is what makes Australia such an ecological and biological anomaly with so much diverse nature and wildlife unique only to the country. From Tasmania to the stunning beaches to the outback rainforests and Great Barrier Reef, there is so much natural beauty to be found here. But not only is the nature stunning, Australia is also home to a few highly advanced cosmopolitan cities, with the two biggest cities, Sydney and Melbourne, routinely ranking among the top 5 best cities to live in the world. Speaking of which, let's hit 5,000 likes and I'll do a video on the top 10 best cities to live in the world. Anyways, it isn't hard to see why the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have lived here for over 60,000 years. Of course, the British also did their imperialist thing and claimed the continent in 1788 as a penal colony for their convicts, but Australia eventually gained independence in 1901. And since then, the land down under has become a country with one of the highest qualities of life, a great healthcare and education system, incredibly low crime, vibrant and welcoming residents, and an excellent economy with hardly any poverty. Nonetheless, only 25.5 million people actually live here, and less than 100,000 of those are US expats.
Wait, there must be a reason only 1 to 4,000 new Americans immigrate here each year, right?
Well, maybe you'll find out in my top 10 reasons.
Cost of living, probably. Bro, he's done a 2-minute intro. Fuck it, hell.
Not to move to Australia. Number 10. It gets hot. Contrary to popular belief, most of Australia isn't all perfect year-round temperatures. Well, unless you're in Sydney or Perth, but even those get some bad days each year. And although a few cities on the southern coast and Tasmania actually get hit by really cold fronts coming up from Antarctica, the real issue in most of Australia is the heat. There is a reason nearly 90% of Australians live within 50 kilometers of the coast. The heat makes the rest of the country basically unlivable, especially in the outback where temperatures can reach 50 degrees Celsius.
So literally like everyone pretty much lives around the outskirts of Australia, and then like in the middle there's barely anyone.
122 Fahrenheit. Heck, it gets so hot in the desert here that the opal miners back in the day ended up building an underground settlement called Cooper Pedy to protect them from the heat. It's pretty cool, actually. And even though the cooling effects of the ocean make the coastal areas more livable, most of the cities will still get days above 40 degrees Celsius during the summer. Add in some of the most beautiful beaches in the world with tons of sunny days to enjoy, and the fact that you're pretty darn close to the equator, and it isn't hard to see why.
I mean, is this a reason not to visit a country because it gets too hot? I mean, 40. I mean, I've lived here a long time, but like 40, it's not bad. If you're in the water and you're cooling down or something, it's not too bad at all. I mean, 50, obviously, that's fucked.
2/3 of Australians are diagnosed with skin cancer by the age of 70. Oh, and I'd be remiss to not talk about that other thing the heat and sun cause as well. Bushfires. You've probably already heard about the wildfires that have decimated 46 million acres and killed 451 people this past year alone. But sadly, it's not the first, and it definitely won't be the last.
Lots of bushfires down under. Number 9.
Number 9. It's isolated. You might have wondered why so many Australians have left their beautiful homeland that seems a lot like paradise to most Americans. But the reality is that many Aussies feel trapped, lonely, and isolated.
I hate the way Americans say Aussies. Aussies. Yo, I love my Aussies, bro. Nah, shut up. You can't say it right.
from the rest of the world. And while you may think that's silly, since you can just hop on a plane and fly to a nearby country like Indonesia or Singapore, it actually isn't so simple. Most Australians live in the southeastern part of the country, so a flight to anywhere other than New Zealand means crossing the giant continent of Australia and then some, or just the entire Pacific Ocean.
Jeez.
Basically, even those close countries end up being anywhere from a 6 to 10 hour flight away. It's at least a 14-hour flight if you're going to the US, and you should expect to spend over 24 hours in airplanes and airports if you want to visit anywhere in Europe. And before you comment,
so what if other countries are far away? Australia's huge. Just explore that.
Well, the thing about that is that Australia isn't just isolated from other countries. The cities here are actually really isolated from each other. The land down under is the third.
Bro, it's a fucking massive country. This is not a reason not to visit here, bro. What? Or move here? What? Mate, how often are you flying to other countries that you don't want to take long flights? Like, bro, if you move to Australia, that means you live here. So, like, why are you... Unless you're like a, I don't know, international businessman or something. Why are you taking so many flights around the world? I don't get it.
Least densely populated country in the world with just 3 people per square kilometer, and it only has 5 real cities with metro populations over 1 million residents. So as I'm sure you can guess, the population centers are very spread out, and most of Australia is very remote. For example, the 2 closest big cities would be Sydney and Melbourne, but they're still an 8.5-hour drive apart. Melbourne to Brisbane's an 18-hour drive, Adelaide to Darwin's a 31-hour drive, and Sydney to Perth is a 41-hour
I've actually driven from Melbourne to the Gold Coast. A long as fuck drive.
Stop trek with pretty much nothing in between. Number 8. Time zones. Speaking of isolation, Australia isn't just physically isolated from other countries. You're also going to have trouble keeping in touch with your family or friends back home unless they live somewhere in Asia. Australia is an entire Pacific Ocean away from the US and 2 continents length away.
Why is this guy acting like the US is like the main country of the world? Like, of course there's different times. There's different time zones all around the world. What is he on about? Oh my god. Of course, if you're on the opposite side of the literal world, of course you're going to have a different time zone.
From Europe, so the time zones are practically exact opposites. Now, Australia has 3 main time zones, but for the sake of just showing how different the times are, when it's 7 a.m. in Sydney, it's 10 p.m. in London, and when it's 6 a.m. in Perth, it'd be 6 p.m. in New York. I get that this is just more of an inconvenience than a huge deal, but it can get pretty tedious trying to schedule a call with your international family and friends. Number 7. The internet sucks.
I back this one. Our internet is shocking. It is so bad.
Do manage to get a hold of your family and friends. Time zones might not be the only thing that get in the way. Because even if you schedule that Zoom call perfectly, the internet might just randomly cut out or start lagging. And by the time it's fixed, it's probably the other person's bedtime. Sure, the United States isn't anywhere near the best when it comes to internet speeds compared to most developed countries. But it's light speed compared to Australia, which is only ranked as the 43rd best country for internet. And no, I don't just mean that on average it has relatively slow download and upload speeds. I mean the most expensive plans still disconnect or lag frequently, and a lot of the plans actually have...
The MBN was a failure.
Data caps. Who does that anymore? A 200 gigabyte a month plan in Brisbane with download speeds only up to 12 megabits per second will cost you $65 a month. And don't even think about going over, or you'll have to pay an outrageous fee, and your internet speeds will slow down to 256 kilobytes per second.
I mean, you can buy like unlimited data plans. It's a bit more expensive, but you can buy unlimited data plans.
Developed nation has any internet speeds under 1 megabit per second. That's just ridiculous. Number 6. Everything wants to kill you. If the frustratingly
I
slow
knew
internet
animals would be on
speeds
here.
are enough to make you want to go on a digital cleanse and take a camping trip out in the wilderness, well, don't, because literally everything here is trying to kill you. Yeah, Australia's home to box jellyfish, stonefish, tons of poisonous snakes and spiders, blue-ringed octopuses, stingrays, sharks, and the largest saltwater crocodiles in the world.
Just
Wait,
everything,
did you
bro.
think I was done? No, I'm just getting started. Because kangaroos, dingoes, cassowaries,
Wait. Kangaroos don't try and kill you. What?
Cone shells, and drop bears can all pose serious
Yeah, the drop bears, guys. The drop bears will kill ya. Yeah, don't mess with them drop bears.
threats. Okay, well, maybe not the drop bears since they don't actually exist, but the rest
No.
of those animals...
What's he on about? The drop bears definitely exist. Mate, if you're walking through the bush, they drop down and they just, mate, don't mess with them.
have all taken human lives. Australia just isn't a place where you can spontaneously go for a hike or swim without being very cautious of your surroundings at all times. Heck, there's a story of a man being snatched out of his boat in a river by a giant crocodile while he was just going fishing with his family. Although, don't get too worried, because you're actually more likely to die by falling off a horse than from one of the deadly critters here. Just be careful and respect the animals whose homes you're visiting. Except
just
for
don't mess with them, man.
Well, you might think they're so cute and cuddly. They can be vicious, and many Australians actually see them as pests. The only reason the country hasn't declared war on them yet is because the kangaroos outnumber Australians 2-1, and the Aussies don't want a repeat of what happened in the Great Emu War of 1932. Spoiler alert, the emus won.
Story of that, the moral of that story, don't mess with emus. Do not mess with emus.
Number 5. Bad drivers. Well, many Aussies try to blame the kangaroo and their lack of road sense as the reason for so many car accidents. Only 7,992 kangaroo collisions actually occurred in 2019, which was less than 5% of the total automobile accidents in Australia. So maybe the drivers should start taking a little more responsibility. Now, of course, every town, city, state, and country is going to have its fair share of bad drivers, but the drivers in Australia are really some of the worst in the world, and I'm not just saying this is some American trying to diss Australia, because I love Australia, and even people from Australia will admit
I hate the way he says Australia
that the drivers here are terrible. In fact, Aussies actually upload more videos of illegal and bad road behavior than any other country.
Oh my god. But yeah, bloody was that a dono I hear?
What am I doing here?
W Dono in the chat. You're an absolute king, bro. Absolute king. Appreciate that, bro. What are you doing here? You're watching apparent reasons not to move to Australia. Yes, run up those W's, chat. The main driving accidents you do hear or like see on the news or something, it's all like the main freeways in the cities and stuff. So they're going like these. It's like rush hour traffic. Every in the morning there's always a crash. In the afternoon there's always a crash. Because it's like a 5 lane highway. 4 or 5? 4. Is it 5 in some spots? I don't know. 4 lane highway. Yeah. So there's bound to be a crash because there's that many idiots. Literally, I remember I went for a drive on the freeway once. Literally, someone sped past me at like 150 km an hour. So yeah, there's literally a crash every day. I know on the Melbourne freeway there's always a crash. So
Number 4. It's expensive. Aside from the aforementioned incredibly expensive internet, pretty much everything else here is expensive too. Because while Australia is big, it's still an isolated island, so a lot of things have to be shipped over long distances to get here. Of course, the cost of living varies based on location, with it generally being cheaper the farther you get from the coast and major cities, but Australia as a whole is pretty pricey. Granted, it is balanced out by the decent job pay, since Australia actually has the highest after-tax minimum wage of any country and a top 10 average income at around $64,000 per person per year. But then again, this also just creates an expensive cycle, since the high minimum wage means high production costs, which means it's cheaper to import goods, but imported goods are expensive, and well, that's just economics. And even though most of the wages are...
I'm pretty sure the minimum wage went up again. Didn't fucking... What's their prime minister's name again? Fuck. What's his name? Anthony Albanese. Yeah, I think he bumped it up again. Like he bumped up an extra $1 an hour or something. Like it's just gonna cost. Doesn't that just make businesses? They have to pay their employees more, which means it's gonna cost more, which means it literally. I don't fucking know. I'm not an expert in economics. Don't worry.
Are livable. They're not necessarily enough to buy a home, especially in Sydney or Melbourne, where the median home values are 1.15 million and 855,000 Australian dollars, respectively. That's nearly 820,000 US dollars for your average home in Sydney. Yep. Number 3. Places close early. To add on to the fact that things are expensive here, it might be difficult to even buy said things if you're working normal hours, since most shops, stores, and restaurants usually close by the time the sun sets during the week. And if they operate at all on the weekends, they're probably going to have even more limited hours. This one isn't a huge deal once you're used to it and plan accordingly, but it can be a big culture shock if you're coming from the States where there's an abundance of 24-hour businesses. Now, to be fair,
we do have a few 24. Mate, Kmart, big up Kmart, 24 hours. I mean, I think most places close at what, 6 p.m. Like most people finish work at like 4:35, and then you go shop after. But like, I don't know. Most restaurants are open pretty late.
A few places do actually stay open later if you're in a big city like Sydney, Brisbane, or Melbourne, but it's hard to buy things past 5 or 6 p.m. pretty much anywhere else. Number 2, poor mental health services. Despite their vivacious exterior, Australians usually keep their feelings to themselves. It's just not normal to talk about personal problems here, and the mental health of the nation is suffering for it. Now, there are free care options available for at-risk individuals, but since there's a shortage of psychologists, it's left many other people with no one to talk to about their problems unless they pay a lot of money out of pocket. And even then, many doctors and citizens as a whole aren't well educated in the case of mental health here, so good therapy isn't easy to find. 1 in 5 Australians between the ages of 16 and 85 have experienced mental health illness, and over 20% of young Australians struggle with depression or anxiety. Maybe the mental health issues here actually contribute to that risk-taking, fearless reputation most Australians have earned themselves, since it's kind of the culture here to just suck up your problems and pretend you're always having a good time. Now, before we get...
It's actually a good way to put it. I mean, yeah, I get that. A lot of people don't express their feelings and stuff. But I think now, like in 2022, I think there is a bit more like the awareness has been spread a bit more. I feel like more people talk in 2022 than they did a few years ago. Yeah, I say that a lot of people advocate for it. You know, talk to your mates, check up on your mates and stuff. Like we got Are You Okay Day now. They do that in schools. Are You Okay Day. It's like a whole day dedicated to making sure everyone's alright, mental health and stuff. So it's like, you know, we're taking steps, we're getting better and better.
Get to number 1, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And if you want to
get
see
this
more
self
videos
promo
about
out of here,
Australia or any other countries in general, let me know in the comments. But without further ado,
what is that?
Number 1. The immigration process is very difficult. While visiting Australia is as easy as having a valid passport, filling in an online application, and paying a small fee, becoming a permanent resident is incredibly difficult for U.S. citizens. Now, for young Americans eager to explore the world, Australia does offer a program known as the Working Holiday Visa, which allows you to live in the country for a year or two in exchange for paid work. But if you want to move here permanently, there are a lot of requirements, such as a confirmation of funds, a skill set assessment, proficiency in English, a health exam, no criminal record, and being under the age of 45. For the most part, you either...
That's not even that bad, though. Like, I don't know. Is that bad? I mean, that's just like basic, yeah, make sure you're healthy, make sure you're not a fucking drug lord or something. And, I mean, under 45 is a bit weird. I won't lie. Like, what if you want to come retire here? I mean, maybe that's different. Maybe there's like a retire. I don't fucking know.
have to have a lot of money saved up and plan to start a business in Australia or offer a highly desired skill that no available Australian worker has. So while it's definitely easier to move here than to certain countries in Europe, it's still very difficult for your average American to immigrate here permanently, and that's probably why only 1,000 to 4,000 Americans do it each year.
Oh, is that a dono? Yo, appreciate you, bro. Absolute king shit right there. W for my man. Yes, I see those W's in chat. Oh, what a legend, bro. What a legend.
Sure more would if they could. But Australia is a beautiful country with amazing cities, culture, and people. So if you're willing to go through the troubles and put in the effort of moving here, you won't be disappointed.
Alright. That wasn't actually too bad. A couple of them I was like, it's a 50-50. It's like more personal preference if you don't like this sort of thing. But like, for the most part, it's not even too bad. It's a great country. The cost of living at the moment is a bit cooked though, so I advise if you do move here, be rich.